so I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and read the remote meeting instructions. This meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board commission members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count toward quorum, and the meeting will be broadcast live. No, may be broadcast live and will be recorded on ECAT. And in the agenda and meeting posting, there are detailed instructions about what you would like to do if you would like to participate at any point in the meeting. All right, so next we have attendance. So going around on my screen, Jim,
Here.
John, Ventresco,
Here.
Rob,
Here.
Here.
Ed,
Here.
and Dennis.
Here.
And Varela is here as well. So I'm delighted to welcome Rob Rogers to join us. I know I've known Rob for 15 plus years, and I'm confident he's going to be a fantastic addition to the committee, and is a professor at Stonehill and has been very active in our community. So welcome, Rob.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. Are you broadcasting live from Stonehill?
I am still at work, yes.
Excellent. All right. Moving on to the minutes. We definitely have a mistake in the minutes unless Ed has had a change of heart and does not want to be vice chair. So they're reflecting that Meredith is vice chair. And so that needs to be changed to Ed Hands.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think the confusion was that Meredith was nominated, or we discussed Meredith, and Meredith respectfully declined. Did anyone else have any other changes or comments?
Nope, they look great. I can move it.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, Jim,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Rob,
I'll abstain.
Dennis,
Aye.
and Ed.
Aye.
Varela is an aye as well. All right, so do we know if Meredith is joining?
I have not heard. I know that Phil is not. I've not heard from us or from Meredith.
All right, so it looked like recreation was broken into two parts with one presentation by Jim and one by Meredith. So Jim, would you mind kicking us off on your portion of the priorities discussion?
You're muted, Jim.
Thank you. Wayne, could you put it up on your screen?
Possibly. Hold that thought. I opened it before I started the meeting to confirm that I actually could with this new upgrade, which is slow. Okay. And then share the screen. All right. Come on. Is that working for folks?
Well, I don't know if I was stepping on people's toes, but Rec was listening. Yes, we can see it. Meredith is on the Rec Commission, and so I kind of took outdoor recreation as my part. And the major thing I wanted to suggest was start laying some plans for improving the Depot Street property. Other than that, the criteria that were asked for, I kind of put down what we are currently using, basically.
Could you give us a
So
little
the
bit
main-
more information on the two things that were identified as potential Eagle Scout projects?
Right. One of them was coming up with a plan for signage or actually putting signs in at Wheaton Farm. If you're used to the place, it's a nice place to walk. If you aren't used to it, you can get lost, which I did early on. It's not self-evident, and I think it would greatly improve the experience of people who are new to the area or new to that particular location if it was signed. I know there's issues with sign damage, but again, I think there's enough experience at borderline and other areas that we can draw on that it could be done correctly. And I just suggested it as a scout project because I know they're always looking for them. The other would be to try to get a more user-friendly electronic mapping system of town properties for hikers, for walkers. And I know even as often as I walk at Wheaton Farm, I got turned around once and was on my GPS looking for a way out. found myself in someone's backyard. And having the ability to call up even a photograph of some of the branches of the trails might be helpful. So again, taking John's suggestion, we'll just leave it to our children and grandchildren to do that.
So I was curious if we had any folks identified who might potentially be thinking of doing that as a project, but
I don't.
It's a good
I
idea
haven't
for
brought
one.
this. I haven't brought this to the scouts because I wanted to bounce it off the committee first.
I would think we've worked with the Scouts several times up at Wheaton Farm. In fact, the garden itself was originally constructed as an Eagle Scout project, and putting signage on the trails is certainly well within their capabilities. There have been similar work done, even more extensive work at the Kippy Grant Reservation. I don't know, what are you talking about when you say electronic signage? You're not gonna put a sign out in the woods, right?
No, it's interactive. Just using your cell phone to, as you walk through the area, to identify where you are and what's coming. I know it could be done. I don't know how to do it, but something like that might be of interest to up-and-coming young IT person.
So things like QR codes on signs, is that what you're?
Well, you could
something
do
you
it that
scan
way.
with your phone?
You can do it that way, or you can do it, I would think, using the geo-positioning aspect of your phone. As you're walking along, you can have your phone pop up, what's coming up next, which way you're going to turn, what's off this way, what's off that way. Just an idea to show you I'm not totally senile yet. Working on it though. The main thing would be getting moving on Depot Street. I know it's in the midst of construction now, but that doesn't deter planning and thinking ahead. I think it would be wise to utilize that investment by the town in the near future.
I was just at a meeting of Lions who are involved in spending some of Lee Williams's money, and it was mentioned that if there were trails going to be put in at the DPW police and fire, that they would be interested in putting up a trailhead that would have a map and some information and things like that. So yeah, there are a number of people thinking of that, and I agree with you. the town has certainly gone out of its way to preserve that conservation area. They've been faced with several proposals to have a back entrance to the fire station so that they could exit onto Foundry Street, and have turned it down several times because they're trying to preserve the conservation land.
Good. That's all I got.
I just had a quick question in regard to, so there wasn't any plan whatsoever in the municipal center about a walking path or trailhead or anything like that. Nothing was ever done. Am I understanding that correctly?
If you're asking me, I don't know.
I believe if you look at the plan, John, they
No,
did,
I'm not sure I understand the question. I think you're asking, John, if trail access and trail access and trail construction was part of the fire and public safety and DPW facilities construction. If that's the question, then no, that's not part of it. The current project is focused on the roughly 10 acres of municipal use land.
I was referring back to the original plan for the 5 acres that Jim actually worked on. There was some talk about trails or making use of the conservation area back there.
I like the idea. I mean, I see more and more people walking on Depot Street now. I mean, it's just going to be a go-to, especially when the Depot Street, Foundry Street, connecting down to Swift Park, starts in what, 5 to 8 years, hopefully.
The sidewalk all the way through. Yep.
Yeah, with the sidewalk and everything being connected, it would be great. And now Dead Man's Curve.
Yep.
Wow. So.
Yeah.
Can you please educate me on what Dead Man's Curve is? Because this is not a thing I'm aware of.
It's where the farmer's market used to be on Depot Street.
Okay.
And it's called Dead Man's Curve because the parking area back there actually was once part of 123. And because it ran into the edge of the swamp, it always froze before the rest of the road. So people would slide off the road, and several people were killed there.
I don't know. I remember racing back when I was a youngster. I think there's a song after that too.
Yeah, I'm sure there was.
But I do I see in the future all this being connected. It's going to be unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
I just heard from Meredith, and she says she's having trouble logging in, Wayne.
I don't see her
Okay.
in the attendees. The only attendee we have is ECAT.
What's next on the agenda, Madam Chair?
Next, well, besides finishing recreation when Meredith joins, the only other
There's
item on the agenda
not
for
a-
this week is the community housing priorities. Oh, there she is.
There she is.
Sorry,
Yeah.
everyone. I apologize.
Hello.
Hi there.
Problem. So Jim has just kind of finished his, like going through the things that he identified in his part of the presentation on recreation priorities. But kind of wanted to defer to you since you're a longtime member of REC. So no, you weren't privy to the discussion, but what were your thoughts, or are there any thoughts that you want to share with the group?
Right. Yeah. So, first and foremost, the commission wants to be respectful of the financial climate that the community is in right now. And so we had conversations about that recently, just to say, at one point we had a splash pad on, but it would be a little tone deaf to present that to the community again. And so there's that piece. That's first and foremost of being aware of that, and that we also just had some major projects funded and completed, which is extraordinary. The Richardson Olmsted Playground and the pickleball, basketball, and tennis courts at the high school were the most recent big funding. But ongoing is a consideration for us is maintenance, right? Because if we build a park, we need to make sure that the DPW can maintain it. And that's a real consideration for us. On our immediate forefront is the pool, and the board is now tasked with raising funds in order to reopen the pool. And there's some concern about the age of the pool and its continued maintenance. The pool operates, it's about $30,000 a year. It always has operated at a loss. And so in the climate that we're in right now, it's a little tough. It was closed for a little bit during the COVID time period, understandably, reopened. There was work done to the changing rooms and bathrooms. For me personally, I love it. It's a sandy bottom pool, which is just magnificent and so unique, particularly where it is in the town. But there's some feeling that it would need to be a major drive, which we actually were doing prior to COVID. I was doing a lot of social media. We were really bringing up the membership, and then the COVID era, it was tough. So whether or not the funds are going to be raised remains to be seen. There's a new committee that was created, and 60,000 is the ask to start, and then that would need to be something done annually. So there's that piece. There's also the fact that Frothingham Hall is ill-equipped for the volume of people who utilize the recreation services. The last number that I saw, it was 17,000 people a year that they service. It's a lot of people, and our town is growing in size, and our programs are regularly sold out. So there's that piece that we need more space. Add to it, the schools are facing financial difficulty, and one resolution that they have is to charge for every square inch of space that they possibly can. And, it's not something I blame them on, but the original rollout for their fees would have been catastrophic for many of the programs in town, including recreation. So they pulled back on that and are looking to revise for that, but that's a consideration for us. And then lastly is, which I think I brought up at one of our meetings before, is the need for childcare in town. And Maplewood previously filled that void, and then they stopped doing after-school care. And that's been very difficult, and there's a cost consideration with private camps. There's some magnificent ones in the area, but they can cost $7,000 a go. And for many families, that's prohibitively expensive. And so what we found with the recent re-rollout of, we call it the summer program, also known as Rec Camp, that it sold out. Last year's camp sold out in 24 hours. And it was 6.5, 7 weeks. It didn't go into August. But what we're looking to do is to expand that summer program. It's very affordable. The kids love it. We'd like to see it later in the day as well. So the initial rollout is 9 to 3. But for working parents, that can be difficult. Not only for the short period of time from 6 to 7 weeks, but also, if we could expand it till the end of August would be great, and expand it, make it longer in the day. The long-winded aspect of what I'm telling everyone is, I think we need to consider, I'm not sure what's going to happen with the pool, but everything that I've laid out, I think we need to consider at some point in our future the possibility of a huge center in Easton that would fill all of these needs. And how that would be done and where it would be done, I'm not sure, but it might be something for us to think of in the long term. And certainly we just had two major projects here. And I'm not saying this is anything that should be on our forefront for any time soon, but there is a need and a want in the community for all of this. That's all.
Okay.
Any
Thank you.
questions?
So I'm assuming that there isn't a way for, I can't see a way for CPA to help with the town pool in the short term.
No, I don't think
wouldn't fall
so.
under our-
Yeah, I had spoken with Tom, previously, and he didn't think so, and Stephanie as well. And it is what it is. I mean, if we can come up with the funds privately, we do that. And I don't even know on a larger scale if we did, if we had like a rec center. I mean, it would be really great if the Y had taken over the center school, right? Because that would be everything. And I'm a big advocate of public-private partnerships like this. I don't know where things went south there, other than I had been told that whether it's true or not, I don't know, but that the Y had relooked at everything, and they felt that where they have a big center in Foxborough and one in Stoughton, that was adequate for our area. And I don't know, anything further than that, but that sure would have been really great. Because in terms of a pool, if we had an indoor pool, an additional one from the one at 50 Oliver, it can be used more. In our area, really, for a community pool, it can only be used for 3 months of the year. And it's a very costly venture, especially given that it's 40 now and it's October. So anyway.
I've heard from the Y that the cost of repairing Center School exceeded their budget. And so that ties into what you just said as well. So it's too bad. Hopefully, one of the other buildings that are going to be going out of use could be rehabbed into a rec center or a senior center or something like that. And there are private funding sources that may be interested in helping out with the pool. So
you mentioned that to me, Ed, and we're going to explore that. They were, I'm not on the board for raising money, but they were getting the infrastructure set up to be able to solicit funds. And so I'll be making that call.
Very good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Wayne, do you know what is going to happen with the fire station on Bay Road?
There is going to be a presentation at, I believe, 7:30 on Monday to the select board from Studio Lou's architects, who were hired on the town's behalf by Mass Development to do that public planning process for the 3 municipal properties. That's DPW, Fire Police at Lothrop, and then the Bay Road sites, Fire Station 3 and the Historic Schoolhouse Water Department building. So
they wouldn't be big enough. I don't think they'd be big enough.
It's not, that's certainly not big enough. So they took a lot of input from folks about possible uses for the 3 sites, put together a report, and then they used that input to come up with a very broad concept plan for the Bay Road site, which is a combination of housing and commercial. So, reflecting the desires of the community and the survey respondents and such as part of the process. But of course, any disposition or redevelopment of any of those properties is several years out.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. The fire station is part of the Bay Road Historic District, so that would involve the Historical Commission at some point. I mean, as a potential source of maybe funding or something like that.
Yeah, I think the building itself is not a contributing resource. It was built in like the 80s.
Oh,
What
no,
about
but
next door?
Right, the school.
The old schoolhouse, yeah, yeah. That, the concept there would be to retain and rehab that, for, live workspace is what the rough concept is, using historic preservation tax credits.
There you go. All right. I knew there was historical something there.
There is indeed, yes, the neat old school
went-
building.
I went to kindergarten there.
Oh, wow, very cool. So you're responsible for that graffiti carved into the desk.
Probably.
Right. As far as rec priorities, are there any other kind of long-term, I'm thinking with like sports or things like that that have been identified as needs that have not yet been addressed that we should be on the lookout for?
No, it's really just facility space and also just making sure that we can maintain what we have. We have these little parks, little regional community parks that are used and then, go into disrepair, need some renovation, whatever. Torrey's Park is going to need a facelift. We used to have T-ball there, and then when Alley's Park was renovated, the T-ball field over at Alley's Park is beautiful and has stands, so that's taken over precedence there. And a lot of this just comes down to the ability for the DPW to be able to maintain as well. And where we find, just like in sports that we see, there's an ebb and flow to excitement, right? All of a sudden, volleyball is the biggest thing when we didn't have volleyball 20 years ago, or there's a big draw for lacrosse, or previously it was Little League. So really, it depends what the big hit is and where the draw is, where the excitement is, and we kind of shift focus there. But those little community parks, I think, are important, especially for a town as large in square footage as Easton. Easton in Southeaston, where we have so much growth, in the target area, Southeast, I'm talking about, other than Alley's Park, which is shifted over by Pine Street, there's no park in a traditional sense there. Certainly there's New Pond and Old Pond, and we see people fishing every single day, which is really cool. We've got Swift's Park, which is going to be part of the renovation of that whole corridor, which is pretty exciting. I wish that we had a recreation representative on the planning board, because what I really would have liked to have seen is at the new Sawmill Village, where the old foundry was, is a play space. It's quite common to have in a new development, swing sets, and it doesn't have to be large scale, but it would have been nice to see that there, because that whole part of town could have used that outdoor recreation. But it is what it is. People can put it in their backyard, I suppose, but we don't want to have to force that on anybody. It's not a inexpensive venture to put a play structure in. And so that's really, those are the conversations we're having. It was a tough blow to have the pool closed, and I included bothered by it. It's understandable. This is the climate we're in, and every department had to offer up a sacrifice, and unfortunately that pool was the sacrifice, because it was the only initiative program that isn't self-sustaining in terms of recreation. But it's the cool thing about recreation is that much of the department is self-sustaining, because the revenue that comes in from the programs, and Joe is very mindful of the budget in that aspect. But really, it's sort of the long-term growth and increase in population in the community, and saying, like, Frothingham Hall is just not going to do it in the long term to service all types of recreation programs and our seniors. And so where are we going to put them? And if the schools are having difficulty with what they're doing, that's maybe not necessarily an avenue that we can take, although they're not occupied in the summer, so one would think. But it's just kind of vision over the long term.
And are any of the other parcels in the Old and New Pond area kind of on our priority list for potential acquisition to expand the area from Swift Park to the ponds? And should they be?
The land at Old Pond, when we were initially planning Swift's Park, there was some there was some talk of joining the uh, conservation land there to a trailhead at Swift's Park. That was complicated because there's private property in there, and we didn't follow up on it. But certainly there's potential there. Um, and it's too bad. You know, hindsight is 2020, as they say. But where Sawmill Village is, the CPC looked long and hard at that as potential recreation area. Geez, back at the beginning of us, and we ran into parents saying it was contaminated land that they didn't want their kids playing on, and we dropped it, and now people are going to be living there. So, hallelujah.
Yeah. Well, well, a very important initiative is, and it'll be a tough one, but I know Denise Higgins was working on the program for the weeds in both ponds, because if we don't take on an initiative there, those ponds will be choked out, and look like the one up on Union Street. And I don't know where that is at, but that's a really important one.
I can report on that.
Oh, good.
Um, Jen Carlino did present a plan on using some kind of chemical to control that. They also got a grant to at Old Pond to do some planting along the edge, and where we meaning the Agricultural Commission has volunteered to help her with that project. So, but the other one did that come to us already?
Last month.
Yep.
So it's on the warrant.
Yep.
Or was it phase 2?
Yeah.
I forget which 2 ponds it was, but
Okay.
2 of the ponds are.
Yeah. Yeah, those are, that's a really important initiative, really important. And Joe had proposed some programs that he would like to see over time, the ability to be able to borrow a kayak, borrow a canoe, to be able to access those, whether they stay on property and are just chained to a tree or something like that. I'm not sure what his vision is for that, but he really did, in his sort of forecasting over time, wanted to include that area. And the cool thing is, I mean, I don't know how long it's going to be. It could be 5 to 10 years, but once we get the sidewalks in that area, it's going to be pretty stellar.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comment on recreation priorities? All right. Next on the agenda is community housing or affordable housing priorities. Dennis, you have forgotten more about affordable housing in Easton than I know. Would you like, I'll confess that Dennis and our travel schedules did not work well with each other. So he and I have not spoken about these, but Wayne was kind enough to assemble what we already had.
So as usual, Wayne has done an outstanding. He's got his finger on the pulse. That's for sure when it comes to affordable housing and what will work and what won't work. It's a lot of times red tape is the biggest thing. So going smaller, I think, for most cases has proven to be successful. With the public buildings coming available, it's very, very difficult to rehab those. Who's gonna manage them? You're gonna have to get into competition for low-income housing tax credits, which are very, very difficult to come across right now, to try to develop these properties and to be able to have some kind of impact that's going to increase affordable housing, and to be able to actually bring it to fruition is very, very difficult to do. But my thing is to stay small. Wayne has, you know, we work together with the housing authority on Paconequit. I did go by there, Wayne. It's good to see the construction. It's been a long time. It's several years that's been vacant and, you know, an eyesore up there, and you know, a discredit to the town, the housing authority, and disrespectful to the neighbors that live there. So it's so great to see that being finally coming, you know, getting done. But that just shows what happens, that you run into so many obstacles and so many hurdles that it just takes years to get a single house converted, basically. Another thing we have to keep in mind is the town did vote for MBTA communities, and how can we bring that into our plan? How can we incorporate what may happen? We don't even know. It may never happen. It may happen, but could we react to it? What would we need to do? That's all new stuff that nobody's ever come across. So what are we going to do there? The housing authority itself is in good shape. We did for several years come to the CPC for funding that to preserve the envelope. The state right now is doing a far better job at funding us and giving us what's called formula funding, so that we can plan accordingly and get projects done within our own means. The properties themselves are in much better shape than they previously were, probably 10 years ago, and a great deal of that is in part to the CPC and what they did to preserve envelopes down on Chandler Way and Elise Circle and Parker Terrace. You know, we did siding, windows, roofs. It was a lot of work to preserve those. There isn't a lot. You're not going to see you know, opportunities like Shovel Shop come along again. So it's developing big projects is, in my thought, it's very, very difficult to bring to an end. And I know Wayne with the Affordable Housing Trust, he can speak to that. You know, he's kicking every can down the road and turning every rock, trying to get things done for years. They were hung up in red tape, and they started thinking outside the box, and as a result, they've got more and more affordable housing that, you know, at a time we were like, why are we giving you money? You're not spending a nickel, and now we can't keep up. So it's, you know, there's plenty of uses for it. Is there another thing I know there's been programs to try to assist seniors. You know, I heard, you know, accessibility for trails and stuff, but it's certainly, you know, for disabled as we age, the baby boomers, I'm a prime example of it. You know, I live in a house with a yard that's too big that I don't really want no more. My wife's disabled. Stairs are becoming an issue. It's, you know, so you think where are people as we age, where are we going? Because it's the growing population right now, and, you know, accessibility and affordability that Meredith can certainly chime in on. You know, not assisted over 55 living is, you sell your house, but those units are, you know, they're just as much as what you're gonna get. So you know, you're just treading water here. So there's a lot of to think about. There's a lot of what's coming down the road. How are we best suited to move forward? How are we best prepared? Those are my thoughts.
And I have a question about habitat, and make sure I understood what you said. Is the competition to get those projects stiff, or is that something that I assume that's something we're continuing to pursue because that's been one of the only outlets that we've been consistently able to.
It's a twofold issue. First up is buildable land, the cost of a buildable lot. So the Affordable Housing Trust tries to look for opportunities where they can acquire buildable lots and then donate those to a nonprofit developer to build family housing. And you cannot pre-designate, but really the only game in town is South Shore Habitat to do that. So it's the scarcity of developable land that has at a reasonable cost. And then the second side of it is Habitat has a capacity issue. Like everybody, they are understaffed, under-resourced. They need to hire contractors and buy materials just like everybody else does. So that can make some of their projects a little slower than they might want. So those are the two challenges that we're finding with the Habitat model. But as Dennis said, Habitat has been a very viable partner for the Affordable Housing Trust, and that's really the only nonprofit that we found that develops really small scale affordable housing. The way the finances work out is if you want to build multiple units, you really need 20, and it's better to have 40. So you're looking at 20 to 40 developments. Where might you get the land, and how would you permit that? There I think might be an opportunity in some future scenario for larger affordable development. B'nai B'rith, for example, is a nonprofit developer that does affordable elderly housing, and they do some quite handsome, affordable senior developments. So I could see and this is pure speculation, but this does tie back to the affordable housing and open space conservation. As we look to some of these priority parcels, would there be an opportunity to use some of them for affordable housing while still respecting the scenic and ecological and agricultural and recreational character of the properties? Could there be 5 or 10 acres to do something a little more substantial than just 1 or 2 units? And then I think the second big growth potential is in these mixed income developments, basically the 40B concept. MBTA Communities has a 10% affordable unit component for developments, I think over 10 units. Making sure that we do have inclusionary zoning for larger projects so that we don't fall behind on the SHI and that we can leverage this development for affordable housing, I think is also an important component. And then with some of the more creative one-off projects, and I don't know if we'd have another project like Shovel Works come up. That was such a unique opportunity. But the town subsidized that, of course, quite heavily, both buying preservation restrictions and also making a loan, which we're getting paid back, which is very gratifying. But could we buy down some of more affordable units if we're doing some creative redevelopment or some big project? And there's nothing on the horizon that I know of, but if like a second Shovel Works opportunity comes up, maybe there's an opportunity we could use CPA funds to leverage greater affordability in that. I think it's just being aware of whatever opportunities come along and trying to respond to them in a creative way.
I have to say the concept of affordable over 55 is so appealing.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be a much easier
At the same
sell.
time, Amanda, and to your point, Dennis, that even if the Easton Country Club development had gone through and they were going to be, my understanding was in that anywhere from 1,800 square feet up to 2,300 square feet. I mean, those were going to be over $1 million.
Mhm.
So it is really a dilemma whether it be Easton's aging population or young families coming in. It's actually scary. I don't know where it's going to go, but and I don't have any answer. I mean, I just the cost of it all. I mean, it'd have to drop, and that's not going to happen. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. But it's on everybody's mind, whether you're my age or whether you're a young family trying to come into a nice community. Again, it's a dilemma for sure.
It's interesting. Um, this demographic thing is it's a bubble right now. The boomers are the bubble, but um, as Scrooge said, at some point we're going to die and decrease the surplus population. So right now is when we need the affordable over 55, but in 20 years that may not be so. So um, there's a lot to think about, and I think we're very lucky that we have Dennis and we have Wayne and the committees thinking about this. Back in the early days of the CPC, we spent a lot of time thinking about this, and it's nice to have people dedicating their government service to looking at this for us.
If I could jump in on the housing, I can't not. I think the point is really astute. So when I have people moving into the over 55s, which we have 3 of in Easton, rarely are they from Easton because it's too expensive, to Dennis's point. And that to me is a very sad part of my business because we, at a very, very, very fast rate, we are losing such an amazing population of our community of folks who were involved. They were volunteers, they lived here, raised their families, they gave back to the community, and we're losing them because of the price of our houses. I mean, one after another, all of my downsizers move out. And I don't know that there's anything that we could do other than long-term planning. And Ed, to your point, you're exactly right. The boomers are the largest generation living, and we have seen historically in the past when we have these age-restricted communities, actually the communities themselves make an appeal to the state to remove the age restriction because, to your point, what happens is when you don't have a buyer pool to be able to buy your home, particularly in an age-restricted community, anybody under 55 can't buy it. That's a very difficult property to sell if you don't have a huge amount of people over 55. And so there actually is a bit of a movement to do away with the age restriction because not everybody wants to live in an age-restricted community, but to have housing stock that appeals to what Dennis was talking about. Maybe it's one-floor living, maybe it's accessibility for folks with mobility issues, and share community space with folks with young children. And maybe the housing, price point is something that's more appealing to a young family or a young couple. But the long-term gain of something like that is you don't run into, Ed, what you're talking about. But this is planning board stuff too, which I'm not a part of. But I think this is all really great conversations to have. And if there is ever a public forum for this, let me know, because I'll jump on board with it, because obviously I see this boots on the ground every day vantage point.
I agree with you 100%, Meredith, and Dennis, what you stated too. And to your point, Meredith, it's a great conversation because I also have noticed the Asian population that have put so much into the community, and they've moved out for the reasons that we've just stated for the last half hour or so. Again, it's an interesting concept about taking those 55 and ups and not putting the age restriction in place. I'd have to have some time to think about the pros and cons on it, but I don't see any cons. But to your point, and you're the one that would know this, those 55 and ups, they're what, 750, 850 price wise, and they're probably
No,
what, 16, 1700 square feet.
yeah, so the Winterberries are not age restricted, but you've got housing stock there that has a first floor bedroom. Those can get up higher into the eights, but typically your Fox Run, your Twin Brooks, and Golden Oaks is the newest one up off of Chestnut Street. Those might go a little bit higher, but you're really looking 650 to 750, which is, I mean, it's this over the last 5 years, it's been extraordinary gains. And the other difficulty is they don't come on often. When they come on, typically you have multiple offers. I mean, it's not like you're not getting 20 offers on it, like, we have at some, but, the prices are also, they're pushing the envelope, but they're just perfect. They're for the most of them are slab ranches. Twin Brooks is all slab, so you don't need a basement that you have to take care of and store your stuff. 1 and 2 car garages, and then Fox Run off of Bay Road is a combination, have basements and some not. And then you have Golden Oaks. But an interesting piece that I need to share is, which is why I think the model that's not age restricted is a better play. The communities, like, for their infrastructure, they like not having, huge amounts of family. But I will tell you, I had a client who I asked him what he thought of it, and he was an original owner when it was built, and he said in the beginning it was really great and they had so much fun. But he said the problem when you move into a new construction age restricted community is everybody ages at the same rate. And he said all of a sudden my friends were dying. And it was something that I had never really thought of, when you move. That's so true. You don't really want that, right? I mean, so having, the 3 of them now at this point, with being, you've got all different ages in them. But I will tell you, most people that move into an over 55 are not 56. They're 75 plus. And that's an interesting concept too, in that people are living longer, right? They're working longer. And so they're moving into these types of communities much later in life than we would have anticipated. The upside is they're not a burden on the school system and a lot of other services, but they, look, I'm getting older. I have to go to more doctor's appointments myself, right? We might need, help in other areas. So I think that there's burden on infrastructure in any way that you look at it, but I'm not always sure that age restricted is the best way to go. I'm more a fan of appropriate housing for our different populations. Like right now, everyone is asking me for a house that has a first floor bedroom for where their parents can stay when they come to visit. Everybody, like across the board. So we have to create flex spaces for that, for, a possible bedroom on a first floor. Never have we needed that before, but, my mom's 78 and she's zipping all around doing everything. I mean, there was, when I was a kid, 70 was old. 70 certainly isn't old. And I don't know if that's because I'm 52 and so it's right around the corner for me, but it seems like people are younger later in life. And, so it's a changing need for housing for sure.
It's very complicated.
Yeah, Meredith, I'm also 52, so I had a moment. I was like, geez, I'm 3 years away from potential move eligibility. One article that I read probably 2 months ago was about tiny houses in mobile home communities. And I know that, I guess since the demise of the Easton Journal, I'm not as up on the trials and tribulations of the mobile home park here, but have there ever been any discussions about that concept? Because I find them very appealing.
Well, we do have cottage homes up off of Pine Street. And what's interesting is, when I was a kid in town, the sort of dreamy house that you would have would be, what we call an estate lot, right? So it's a subdivision and it's the house at the end of the road, way in the back, and you've got 5 acres. Now I can't sell a house with 5 acres. So to your point, the tiny homes have a great appeal. And at first, those homes, the tiny homes, it went through multiple developers because a lot of the folks in town didn't think anybody would move in there. And why would you want that? And this and that. And they sold like hotcakes. They're a great concept. It's basically it's cottage, condominiums essentially, but they're single family dwelling size, not in scope, but you don't have adjoining walls, and people like that. They have a little lot, maybe a teeny little patio. And even where the old Diplomat was, that's not quite the same concept as tiny homes, but they're smaller lots, smaller houses, and it gives that affordability. Because if you buy an acre lot right now, you might be looking at 500,000 for the land itself, thereabout. And so a builder has to build a comparable house size in order to make it work. So our new construction is north of 1.3, unless you're Bill Humphrey and he was able to get some in a little bit lower, but really most of them were over 1 million. So it has to be essentially like a townhouse, if you will. But the community then has to approve that, and we do have the flex zoning, and that becomes an issue. But we're really moving more and more towards that type of a model, and that's what Sawmill Village is. I mean, their houses, back in the day, people would have bellyached about houses on top of each other. Well, the changing need of the community wants that. And really, the first planned unit development was Tanglewood, and that was a horrifying concept at first because it was only 20,000 square foot lot for 5,000 square foot houses. And I'll tell you, people love to get in there because then you have a shared park space in the middle that all the kids can play on. It's like a football field. So, again, going back to just the change of the community and what our needs are. Now, I'm not so sure we want to move towards a Canton model because you try to drive through Canton and it has become congested. So I think that we need to be mindful of what we do. What they did at Plymouth Rubber is ingenious and it's really great. And the whole, Plymouth Rubber was an absolute mess. And now it's lovely and parks and they clean up the area around the Neponset River and that's all great. But man, their population, talk about explosion. They have absolutely exploded there. And I'm not sure, whether the infrastructure has felt the pinch or not, but they certainly could use some renovations to their school and whatnot. So, I think we just need to be mindful of how we do it over time. But, simply having a first floor bedroom, that's all you really need, and a bathroom.
Any other comments on housing priorities? All right, so for next steps on our various subgroups priorities, the thing that about how to combine and condense these is something like a checklist that goes on front of an application where people can check everything that applies, things we've identified, or is it just, do we want something that formulaic, or do we just want our discussions to be guided by the things that we've been talking about in the last 2 meetings? And Rob, just for your background, just given everything with the town's financial condition, trying to be, and again, we're always mindful of being good stewards of the town's CPA money, but feeling like we need to be especially militant and structured as far as making sure that we're not just like, yep, this qualifies, but being more rigorous about making sure that it's a priority for the town and not just someone who had the wherewithal to know to apply for it, which is great. We love for people to apply for it, but I feeling like we needed some more perhaps frameworks or something like that to help guide what we are seeking out applications for.
Do we really need a checklist? I hate checklists. Um, but something that we would something like a checklist that we would use internally that the applicant does not have to fill out,
Fill out.
because I think our application right now is pretty good.
Mhm.
And I think we do better when we discuss rather than run off a checklist, because, you know, well, this one has 5 checks and this one has 4, and we'll be arguing for hours about that.
Yeah. All checks are not created equal either.
Right.
So Wayne, do you think that that could be something you could take a crack at?
Yeah, I'm
Shooting
thinking,
just to guide our discussions, but I tend to agree with Ed.
yeah, as do I as well. I think we used to have, our old style applications were very long with, trying to sort of pre-litigate every application, and we had a lot of checklists, and in practice, it was a conversation among the board members of priorities and how to fund and what to fund. So I'm thinking I take the various documents we've gotten and the input we've gotten, try to condense that into an update for the sections of a 2025 or realistically 2026 plan, and with the idea that from that we would refer to that and try to have that as these are the priorities that the CPC uses to guide its evaluation of potential projects. And so rather than a checklist, it's like, your application should kind of speak to how you're meeting these priorities.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. Other thoughts? All right. We are our next meeting is scheduled for November 13th. And then town meeting is the 10th.
Yeah, Monday the 10th, and then Tuesday, the 11th is the holiday, and then
Do people want to meet on the 13th? Or are we going to be all towned out, and shall we kick it another week? I'm sure Wayne enjoys having multiple evenings a week.
We could
occupied by.
always schedule a meeting before town meeting, a 6 o'clock meeting if something comes up. Other than that, maybe we don't need to meet.
the meetings are scheduled for, and this is a good segue, Amanda, if before we leave, we could look at the 2026 schedule. Let's just chat about that. But yeah, right. So we've got theoretically this Thursday the 13th, and then December 11th, Thursday, December 11th would be the next meeting. And I'm thinking out loud here. So it seems like as the CPC continues to evaluate and refine how to evaluate potential projects and prioritize them, is my read correct that the CPC is not going to necessarily have an official grant application cycle between now and spring 2026 town meeting? Because it's a little late in the game to try and start one up, because like the warrant is usually a February kind of thing for the May meeting.
I think my concern is that we'll run into the same issue we did this year.
Right.
Because just for Rob's background, we were hesitant to come in with a full slate of 6, 7
It's going to be a similar dynamic at the May 20
CPA projects when we were dealing with a budget crisis and major votes at town meeting. So I kind of like us being in the off cycle in the smaller town meetings, but that also theoretically inhibits participation because they're less well attended.
Yeah. And then as I think Lee said in previous meetings, there's nothing, and Tom said this as well, I believe, there's nothing that precludes the CPC from considering projects that come up. If there's something critical, a priority land that comes on the market or an amazing project that needs extra funding or an emergency and a historic resource, the CPC could certainly consider an application for that. Which I guess is my rather long-winded way of saying that if we're not trying to meet some tight deadline, backwards planning from, like, say, the May town meeting, then, and if people are feeling meetinged out, would we just defer to December 11th?
I think that would be good, because we'd also talked about having our next meeting be focused on outreach and brainstorming about, making sure that people understand what CPA is there for, and we have so many organizations doing great work that may not realize that there are funds available for it. And that could dovetail nicely with the priorities that we've come up with.
Yeah.
So, cutting to the chase, no meeting in November. And is that the last on the agenda? Because I've got two quick items. Number one quick item is the Agricultural Commission loves you to pieces. We've now spent the entire amount of the CPC grant, finished our project, and because you guys gave us that kind of a money, we've been able to save most of our rental things, and we're actually talking about buying equipment for next year, like a rototiller and things. So you've made a huge dent in keeping our community garden growing and alive. Thank you very much. And the other one is also about Wheaton Farm. Wayne, maybe you want to talk about this one, because
Sure. Yeah, it's for folks who are interested in or curious about the Wheaton Farm barn, this really interesting, about almost 200-year-old building down at Wheaton Farm. There's going to be a site visit on Saturday, November 1st, from 10 to 11 in the morning. So Saturday, November 1st at 10 in the morning at Wheaton Farm Barn. And I think the street address is something like 599 or something Bay Road. Kevin O'Dwyer, who's the tenant down there, will be in attendance. We'll open up the barn. Folks likely won't really be able to go inside. There's it's a barn under renovation, so it's and the bats. Yeah, so it's but folks can see the stabilization, some of the work, learn about the history, and as I always like to say, there's no such thing as a dumb question. Just if folks are curious, please show up and ask. I will be there. Jen Carlino will be there, our land use agent. Ed has agreed to attend. Thank you again, to talk about the history. So folks interested in Wheaton Farm Barn and what the CPA grants have been funding down there and how the barn is used and can be used, do please come. I think it's on the town crier. It's up on Facebook. So we're hoping to have a good turnout. And we fully expect we'll have a ton of people show up and it'll rain and we won't be able to go in the barn. So that'll be awesome.
The AgCom discussed this last night, and we're going to outreach to all our gardeners and things. So hopefully it'll be a good crowd. And there's nothing like the smell of bat guano in the morning. So
it does clear the sinuses. Yep. And then, Amanda, I'd circulated around the potential meeting schedule for 2026. And it's exactly what we expect. There's no holidays that it conflicts with, really. So it's all just the second Thursday of every month at 7 o'clock. And there's nothing weird about it this year.
Yeah, I didn't see any issues.
Yeah. Okay. There's some interest for boards that have like regular meetings to post their annual schedules. So, it's like, okay, well, before I do that, why don't I ask?
Go for it.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
As long as we can still cancel on weeks, we'll be meeting out.
Yes, we've reserved the right.
All right, I have no items not reasonably anticipated by the chair, so I will be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So we have Ed got the edge on the motion. Jim, was that a second?
That's a second, yes.
All right, all in favor? Jim,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Dennis,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Meredith,
Aye.
and I am an aye as well. All right, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you at town meeting.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.